Welcome back to the channel where ordinary pocket change turns into extraordinary wealth and where history, mystery, and hidden treasure collide. And today's story is one of the most shocking and unbelievable coin stories ever told. Because what if I told you that a simple brown copper-colored penny dated 1984, with no mint mark beneath Lincoln's date, a coin that millions of Americans have held, spent, ignored, or lost between couch cushions, could in rare circumstances be worth as much as $15 million, a value so staggering that it sounds impossible, yet the truth behind this claim lies buried in minting errors, production chaos, microscopic mistakes, and collector obsession that together transformed a 1-cent coin into a legendary artifact of American numismatic history. And to understand how this happened, we must travel back to the early 1980s. A turbulent period for the United States Mint when cost-cutting measures, material changes, aging machinery, and massive production pressure collided at exactly the wrong moment, creating a perfect storm for some of the most dramatic and valuable mint eras ever recorded. Because the 1984 no-mint mark Lincoln cent was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally does not use a mint mark on pennies, and during that year the mint produced billions of 1-cent coins to keep up with circulation demand, pushing presses to their limits day and night. And when machinery is run at extreme speed with minimal downtime, small imperfections become large disasters, dies crack, hubbing processes fail, planchets are improperly prepared, and alignment errors slip past quality control. And this is where the legend of the 1984 no-mint mark penny begins, because among the billions struck, a tiny fraction emerged with catastrophic minting mistakes so dramatic that collectors decades later would fight, bid, and pay unimaginable sums to own them. One of the most famous and valuable errors associated with this coin is the 1984 double die obverse, an error so strong and visually shocking that even non-collectors can see it with the naked eye, where Lincoln's ear appears doubled, swollen, or even tripled, a result of a misalignment during the die hubbing process when the design was impressed into the die more than once at slightly different angles, creating overlapping details that were then struck into the coin itself. And unlike minor doubling that requires magnification, this doubling is bold, dramatic, and unmistakable, especially around Lincoln's ear, eye, and jawline. And while thousands of minor doubled dies exist across U.S. coinage, the 1984 doubled ear variety became legendary because of its clarity, rarity, and high grade, and the way it exposed a critical failure in mint quality control during a high-pressure production year. And collectors quickly realized that pristine examples were far scarcer than raw mintage numbers suggested, because most were circulated heavily before the error was noticed, leaving only a handful in near-perfect condition. And as grading standards tightened and demand exploded, prices escalated into 5 figures, then 6 figures, and in rumored private sales involving ultra-high-grade specimens with additional anomalies, valuations reached into the millions, especially when combined with other errors such as off-center strikes, broad strikes, or die clashes. But the double die alone is only one chapter of the story, because 1984 no-mint mark pennies are also infamous for dramatic die cracks and cuds, where the die itself physically broke during striking, leaving raised blobs, cracks, or missing design sections on the coin. And these errors are evidence of dies being pushed far beyond their intended lifespan, sometimes striking hundreds of thousands of coins after structural failure. And when a cud forms near Lincoln's head or across the lettering, it creates a unique, one-of-a-kind fingerprint that cannot be replicated, and collectors prize these dramatic failures because they capture the exact moment when industrial precision collapsed into chaos, and in rare cases, massive retained cuds covering large portions of the obverse or reverse have surfaced, creating coins that look almost melted or misshapen. And when such errors appear on a famous date like 1984 and are preserved in uncirculated condition, their value multiplies exponentially, especially when certified by top-tier grading services. But even more astonishing are the transitional composition errors tied to this era, because just 2 years earlier in 1982, the mint transitioned from solid copper pennies to copper-plated zinc, and during the adjustment period, leftover materials, experimental planchets, and test blanks circulated through mint facilities, and although officially the transition was completed, Rumors and documented cases suggest that anomalous planchets continued to appear years later, including pennies struck on wrong metal compositions, such as bronze planchets, foreign blanks, or improperly plated zinc cores, and a 1984 no-mint mark penny struck on an incorrect or experimental planchet would represent a monumental error, especially if its weight, composition, and metallurgical analysis confirmed it as unique. And it is precisely these kinds of coins that drive whispered valuations into the 8-figure range. Because collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying a mystery, a one-of-one artifact that challenges official mint records and forces experts to rewrite what they thought they knew. And when such a coin appears, auctions become battlegrounds, private collectors step in quietly, and prices are often never publicly disclosed, fueling legends of $15 million pennies hidden away in vaults and collections. But the errors do not stop there, because off-metal strikes are only part of the story. As some 1984 no-mint mark pennies were struck off-center, sometimes dramatically so, with large portions of the design missing while still retaining full dates, making them legally identifiable and highly desirable, and the more extreme and visually stunning the error, the higher the value climbs, especially when paired with a full date and strong details. And then there are broad strikes, where the collar fails and the coin spreads outward, creating oversized pennies with distorted rims. And while many broad strikes are common, extreme examples with additional doubling or die damage can be extremely rare. And when a coin combines multiple errors, such as a double die obverse with a broad strike or off-center strike, it enters a realm of value that defies traditional pricing guides. Because now the coin is not just rare, it is unique, and uniqueness is the ultimate currency in high-end numismatics. But perhaps the most controversial and fascinating errors tied to the 1984 no-mint mark penny are the alleged meal errors, where mismatched dies from different years or denominations were accidentally paired together, creating coins that should not exist. And while confirmed meals are extraordinarily rare, even the possibility of one involving such a high-profile date sends shockwaves through the collecting community, because a genuine meal error from 1984 would instantly become one of the most important U.S. era coins ever discovered. And even unconfirmed reports drive speculation and value. But what truly pushes the narrative of the $15 million 1984 penny is condition rarity. Because errors alone do not guarantee extreme value, condition matters more than most people realize, and the vast majority of error pennies were circulated, damaged, cleaned, or mishandled long before their significance was understood, leaving only a microscopic number preserved in mint state or proof-like condition, and when an already rare error survives untouched, with blazing luster, sharp strikes, and no wear, it becomes exponentially more valuable, because collectors at the highest level are not competing for dozens of examples, they are competing for one, and this competition is fueled by psychology as much as rarity. Because owning the finest known example of a legendary era coin confers status, prestige, and bragging rights that money alone cannot buy, and this is why prices spiral upward in private transactions far beyond published auction results. And it is also why stories of $15 million pennies persist, because while public records may show 5 or 6-figure sales, the real action often happens behind closed doors, where elite collectors and investors negotiate quietly. But none of this would matter if these coins did not slip unnoticed into circulation, because the most astonishing aspect of the 1984 no-mint mark penny is that these errors were not intentional, they were accidents, failures. Moments when human oversight and mechanical fatigue allowed history to be struck into metal, and countless examples were spent on candy, parking meters, and coffee without anyone realizing what they held. And even today, these coins continue to surface in pocket change, coin rolls, and inherited collections, fueling the dream that somewhere out there, an unassuming penny waits to change a life forever. And this dream is what keeps collectors searching, examining, and hoping, because the possibility, however remote, is real. Next, 1968 1-cent coin with the D-mint mark, a penny that most people would never look at twice, yet under rare and extraordinary circumstances has been associated with valuations reaching as high as $24 million, a number so shocking it sounds fictional. But like all great coin legends, it is rooted in real historical pressure, minting chaos, human error, and microscopic mistakes that occurred at exactly the wrong moment in U.S. mint history. Because 1968 was not just another year, it was a turning point, a year when the United States Mint was still recovering from the coin shortages of the mid-1960s, when mint marks had only recently returned after being removed to discourage hoarding, and when the Denver Mint was operating at full throttle to meet national demand, pushing aging equipment, overworked dies, and rushed quality control systems beyond their limits. And it is in this environment that the 1968 Lincoln cent was born, struck in enormous quantities yet. Hiding within that massive production run were tiny numbers of coins that should never have existed, coins carrying errors so dramatic, so rare, and so poorly understood at the time that they slipped unnoticed into circulation, only to be rediscovered decades later by collectors who realized they were holding something extraordinary. And the story truly begins with the return of mint marks in 1968. Because from 1965 through 1967, the mint deliberately removed all mint marks to stop collectors from hoarding new coins, and when mint marks returned in 1968, it required the creation of entirely new master hubs and dies for each mint, including Denver, and this reintroduction created an opportunity for mistakes at multiple stages of the die-making process, including misaligned hubbing, incomplete impressions, and improperly hardened dies. And one of the most famous and valuable errors connected to the 1968 penny is the double die obverse, an error created when the die received more than one impression from the hub at slightly different angles, causing strong doubling in the design that was then transferred onto every coin struck by that die. And while many doubled dies exist across U.S. coinage, the 1968 doubled die is legendary because of the intensity of the doubling, particularly in the date, the word liberty, and the motto "I in God we trust," where letters appear split, shifted, or shadowed in a way that is unmistakable even without magnification. And because Denver struck such a high volume of pennies that year, the few doubled die examples that escaped detection were rapidly worn down in circulation, leaving only a microscopic number in high mint state condition. And when collectors later realized just how dramatic and rare these examples were, demand exploded, pushing prices into the tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. And in the case of ultra-high-grade specimens with additional anomalies, into the realm of multi-million-dollar valuations. But the doubled die is only the beginning, because the 1968 penny is also known for dramatic die cracks, retained cuds, and catastrophic die breaks, the result of dies being pushed far beyond their intended lifespan. And when a die begins to fail, it does not fail neatly. It fractures, warps, and collapses in unpredictable ways, creating raised cracks across Lincoln's portrait, missing portions of lettering, or massive blobs of metal where parts of the die broke away entirely. And some of the most valuable examples show retained cuds that partially detach from the die but remain in place long enough to strike a series of coins, creating bizarre raised shapes that look almost organic. And because these failures occurred late in a die's life, the coins often show weak strikes combined with extreme errors. A combination that fascinates collectors because it captures the exact moment when industrial precision gave way to mechanical collapse, and when such errors occur on a historically important date like 1968 and survive in uncirculated condition, they become numismatic unicorns. But the true fuel behind the $24 million legend lies in transitional and off-metal errors. Because the late 1960s were a time of experimentation and leftover materials within the mint system. And although the major composition change for pennies officially occurred in 1982, copper sourcing, alloy consistency, and blank preparation in earlier decades were not as standardized as many people assume, and documented cases exist of pennies struck on incorrect planchets, including foreign blanks, experimental alloys, and improperly prepared copper stock, and a 1968 penny struck on the wrong metal, especially one that differs significantly in weight and composition from standard issues, would represent an extraordinary breach of mint protocol. And if such a coin were confirmed through metallurgical testing and authenticated by top grading services, it would instantly become one of the most important era coins in U.S. history. And it is precisely these kinds of coins that drive whispered private sale figures into eight-figure territory. Because collectors at the highest level are not buying coins, They are buying impossibilities, tangible proof that official mint records are incomplete. But composition errors are not the only anomalies associated with this coin. Because some 1968 pennies were struck off-center to dramatic degrees, sometimes missing large portions of the design while still retaining a full visible date and mint mark, which is crucial because without a full date, an error coin loses much of its identity and value, and the most valuable off-center strikes are those that balance visual drama with clear identification. And when an off-center strike occurs on a doubled die or cracked die, the value multiplies exponentially, because now the coin is not just rare, it is unique. And uniqueness is the ultimate driver of extreme prices. And then there are broad strikes, where the collar fails and the coin spreads outward, creating oversized cents with distorted rims. And while minor broad strikes are common, extreme examples from 1968 showing additional doubling, die damage, or weak strikes due to collar failure are far scarcer. And again, condition is everything, because a heavily circulated error might sell for hundreds or thousands, while a blazing red mint state example of the same error can sell for hundreds of times more. And this brings us to one of the most misunderstood aspects of the 1968 penny's value, which is condition rarity. Because billions were struck, but virtually all were circulated immediately, and very few people saved rolls or bags of 1968 cents in pristine condition, especially error coins that went unnoticed at the time, and decades later. As grading standards became stricter and collectors became more selective, the number of surviving high-grade examples shrank even further, creating fierce competition for the finest known specimens. And when 2 or 3 elite collectors want the same coin, price becomes irrelevant, and this is where public auction records stop telling the full story, because the highest prices are often paid in private sales that never appear in price guides, fueling legends of $24 million pennies locked away in vaults. But perhaps the most controversial and electrifying aspect of the 1968 penny story involves alleged meal errors and wrong die pairings, where dies intended for different years or denominations were accidentally paired together, creating coins that defy explanation. And while confirmed meals are extraordinarily rare, even the possibility of one involving a 1968 cent ignites massive speculation, because a genuine Neal error from this era would instantly rank among the most important discoveries in American numismatics. And collectors and researchers continue to study known examples, hoping to uncover evidence of such an anomaly. But what makes this story truly powerful is that none of these errors were intentional. They were the result of human fatigue, mechanical wear, and the relentless demand for coinage during a turbulent economic period. And the fact that such valuable artifacts could slip unnoticed into circulation is what keeps collectors searching today, examining rolls, jars, and inherited collections with renewed hope. Because the possibility, however small, still exists, and as long as one authenticated example continues to challenge expectations and shatter price ceilings, the legend of the 1968 1-cent coin will only grow, transforming a simple copper penny into a symbol of hidden wealth, historical chaos, and the extraordinary consequences of the smallest mistakes, proving once again that in the world of coins, even a single cent can carry a fortune beyond imagination. Next, 2002 1-cent coin with the D Mint mark from the Denver Mint, a coin so recent and so ordinary in appearance that the idea of it being worth up to $6 million sounds impossible, yet buried beneath its copper-plated surface is a convergence of modern minting technology failures, rare transitional mistakes, extreme error combinations, and condition scarcity that have elevated a handful of these coins into legendary status. Because by 2002 the United States Mint was producing billions of pennies using high-speed automated presses, laser-engraved dies, and computer-controlled quality systems. And while many assume that modern technology eliminated major errors, the reality is that increased speed and volume introduced new types of mistakes that could multiply rapidly before detection. And the Denver Mint in 2002 was operating at near maximum capacity to supply circulating coinage across the western United States, pushing presses relentlessly and replacing dies frequently, yet not always quickly enough. And it is in this environment that the most extraordinary 2002 penny errors were born, because even the most advanced machines are vulnerable to misalignment, software calibration errors, improperly prepared dies, and planchet contamination, and when these failures intersect, they can create coins that are not just rare, but fundamentally impossible according to official mint specifications. And the story of the $6 million 2002 penny begins. With doubled dies, an error type that many collectors associate with older coins, yet which still occurs in the modern era, sometimes in even more dramatic ways, because modern hubbing processes involve multiple impressions and annealing steps, and when alignment fails even slightly, the result can be strong doubling across key design elements, and in rare 2002 doubled die obverse examples. Collectors have identified pronounced doubling in the date, the word liberty, and the motto I in God we trust, with split serifs and shadowed numerals that are clearly separated rather than machine-like, indicating a true hub doubling rather than strike doubling. And while minor doubled dies from the early 2000s are known, the most extreme 2002 varieties are astonishing in their clarity. Yet what makes them truly valuable is not just the doubling itself but how few survive in pristine condition. Because modern pennies circulate aggressively, and most examples were quickly scratched, discolored, or corroded, leaving only a tiny fraction in high mint state, and when such a doubled die is discovered in near-perfect condition, certified by top grading services, and accompanied by strong eye appeal, its value skyrockets. But doubled dies alone rarely reach multi-million-dollar levels, which is why the most valuable 2002 pennies combine multiple errors into a single coin, creating what collectors call compound errors, and one of the most important compound errors associated with this date involves off-metal strikes, because the early 2000s were a period of global planchet sourcing, and blanks intended for foreign coinage, experimental alloys, or other U.S. denominations occasionally entered the wrong production stream, and a 2002 penny struck on a foreign planchet, especially one with a significantly different weight and composition, represents a catastrophic breach of mint protocol. And when such a coin is authenticated through metallurgical analysis, proving that it was struck at the Denver Mint on an incorrect blank, it becomes a one-of-a-kind artifact. And it is precisely these coins that drive whispered valuations into the multi-million-dollar range, because they cannot be replicated and they challenge official mint documentation. But the errors do not stop there, because the 2002 penny is also known for dramatic off-center strikes, some missing as much as 50% of the design while still retaining a full date and mint mark, a critical factor for value. And when an off-center strike remains visually balanced, clearly identifiable, and free from damage, collectors prize it not just as an error but as a work of accidental art, and when such an off-center strike occurs on a double die or wrong planchet, the value multiplies exponentially, because now the coin represents multiple independent failures converging in a single moment, and then there are broad strikes, where the retaining collar fails entirely, and the coin spreads outward during striking, creating oversized cents with distorted rims and weak peripheral details. And while broad strikes are not uncommon, extreme examples from 2002 showing additional anomalies such as die cracks or doubling are exceptionally rare, especially in uncirculated condition. But perhaps the most visually shocking errors associated with this coin are die clashes and ghost images, where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, transferring faint mirror images of design elements onto subsequent coins, and in some rare 2002 examples, collectors have identified dramatic clash marks showing reversed portions of Lincoln's portrait on the reverse or traces of the Lincoln Memorial appearing behind the bust, and when these clash marks are strong and combined with other errors, they create coins that appear surreal, almost haunted by overlapping designs. And these visual anomalies captivate collectors because they tell a story of mechanical confusion inside the press. But one of the most important factors behind the $6 million legend is condition rarity in the modern era, because while billions of 2002 pennies were struck, almost none were saved in perfect condition at the time of release, since modern coins are rarely hoarded unless they are immediately recognized as special. And error coins from this era were often discovered only after years of circulation, leaving few pristine survivors, and as grading services became stricter, the number of top-graded examples shrank even further, creating fierce competition among collectors who want the single finest known specimen. and when a coin holds the top population spot with no equals, price becomes theoretical rather than practical, because there is no comparable sale to anchor value, and this is where public auction records fail to tell the full story. Because the highest prices are often paid in private transactions between elite collectors who understand that they may never see another opportunity, and these private sales fuel stories of $6 million modern pennies locked away in vaults. But perhaps the most controversial aspect of the 2002 penny story involves alleged meal errors, where dies intended for different denominations or designs were accidentally paired together, creating coins that should not exist. And while confirmed meals from the modern era are exceedingly rare, even the possibility of one involving a 2002 cent ignites intense speculation, because modern mint controls are assumed to prevent such mistakes, and proving one would fundamentally alter how experts understand contemporary minting processes. And it is this possibility, combined with documented compound errors, that elevates the 2002 penny from a curiosity into a legend. But what truly makes this story powerful is that these coins were not created for collectors. They were accidents, unintended consequences of speed, automation, and human oversight, and many were spent without a second thought, passed from hand to hand as meaningless copper-plated discs, and even today, they can still surface in pocket change, coin rolls, and old jars. Because the modern era has not eliminated the possibility of discovery, it has only made it rarer and more dramatic. And as long as one authenticated example continues to challenge expectations and command extraordinary prices, the legend of the 2002 1-cent coin will continue to grow, reminding us that even in a world of advanced technology and mass production, perfection is an illusion, and sometimes the smallest mistakes create the most valuable treasures, turning an ordinary penny into a $6 million symbol of hidden wealth, modern chaos, and the enduring thrill of the hunt. Next, 2013 1-cent coin with no mint mark, struck at the Philadelphia Mint. A coin that looks identical to billions of others yet under extremely rare circumstances has been linked to valuations reaching as high as $3 million, a number that seems impossible for a coin barely over a decade old. Yet when we peel back the layers of modern minting, high-speed automation, experimental processes, human oversight, and microscopic failures, the legend begins to make sense. Because by 2013, the United States Mint was operating with some of the most advanced coin production technology in history, using laser-engraved dies, digitally modeled hubs, and high-pressure presses capable of striking hundreds of coins per minute. And while many assume that this level of technology eliminates serious errors, the reality is that when systems become faster and more complex, the mistakes that slip through can be more dramatic, more mysterious, and far rarer than those of earlier eras. And the Philadelphia Mint in 2013 produced massive quantities of Lincoln cents without mint marks, flooding circulation with coins that were never meant to be examined closely. And it is precisely this assumption of perfection that allowed some of the most extraordinary modern-era coins to escape unnoticed, because quality control focuses on statistical tolerance, not absolute perfection. And when something falls just outside acceptable limits, but does not disrupt production, it can survive, and the most valuable 2013 no-mint mark pennies are those that embody multiple overlapping failures, beginning with doubled dies, an error many believe belongs to the past, yet which remains possible even in the digital age, because modern die creation still involves multiple hub impressions, annealing cycles, and alignment steps. And if even a fraction of a degree of misalignment occurs, strong hub doubling can result. And in rare 2013 Philadelphia cents, collectors have identified dramatic doubled die obverse examples showing clear separation in the date, the word liberty, and the motto I in God we trust, with notching and split serifs that confirm true hub doubling rather than strike vibration. And what makes these examples so valuable is not only their rarity but the fact that modern doubled dies are often dismissed or overlooked, allowing them to circulate and become damaged before their significance is recognized, leaving only a microscopic number preserved in pristine mint state. And when such a coin is certified, ranked among the finest known, and combined with exceptional eye appeal, its value can escalate far beyond traditional price expectations. But the doubled die alone does not explain multi-million-dollar valuations, because the most valuable 2013 no-mint mark pennies are compound error coins, where multiple independent mistakes converge into a single impossible object. And one of the most important of these involves off-metal strikes, because in the early 2010s the mint sourced planchets through complex supply chains, including outsourced blank production and experimental alloy testing for future cost-saving measures. And while officially the Lincoln cent remained copper-plated zinc, documented cases exist of cents struck on wrong planchets, including blanks intended for foreign coinage, experimental alloys, or even other U.S. denominations. And a 2013 penny struck on an incorrect planchet, especially one with a radically different weight or metallic signature, represents a catastrophic breakdown in mint protocol, and when such a coin is authenticated through metallurgical analysis and confirmed as having been struck at the Philadelphia Mint, it becomes a one-of-a-kind artifact, and collectors do not assign normal prices to such coins, they assign narratives, significance, and prestige, which is how values can soar into the millions. But the errors associated with this coin do not stop there, because dramatic off-center strikes are another critical factor, and while off-center strikes are known in modern coinage, the most valuable examples are those that retain a full visible date while missing a substantial portion of the design, creating a visually striking yet fully identifiable coin, and in rare 2013 Philadelphia cents, off-center strikes exceeding 40 or even 50% have been documented, and when such an error appears clean, undamaged, and uncirculated, it becomes highly desirable, especially when paired with other anomalies such as doubled dies or die cracks. And then there are broad strikes, where the retaining collar fails and the coin expands outward during striking, creating oversized cents with distorted rims and weak peripheral details. And while many broad strikes are modest, extreme examples from 2013 showing additional die damage or alignment errors are far rarer than collectors realize, particularly in high grade. Because modern coins are rarely saved immediately, and circulation damage happens quickly, but perhaps the most visually haunting errors associated with the 2013 no-mint mark penny are die clashes and ghost images, where obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet between them, transferring faint mirrored design elements onto subsequent coins, and some rare examples show strong clash marks, with traces of the shield design appearing behind Lincoln's portrait, or reversed facial details bleeding into the reverse, creating coins that look surreal and almost layered, and these visual anomalies captivate collectors because they reveal the hidden violence and confusion inside a coin press running at full speed. But beyond the physical errors themselves, the true driver of $3 million valuations is condition rarity in the modern era, because while billions of 2013 cents were produced, almost none were preserved with collector intent at the time of release. And error coins especially were often discovered years later after extensive circulation, meaning that pristine survivors are incredibly scarce, and when grading services identify a single finest known example with no equal, competition among elite collectors becomes intense, because owning the best example of a modern legendary error confers not just ownership but authority, prestige, and historical significance, and this is where public auction records become misleading, because the highest prices are often paid in private sales that are never disclosed, fueling stories of $3 million modern pennies hidden away in collections and vaults. But perhaps the most controversial and electrifying aspect of the 2013 penny legend involves alleged meal errors, where mismatched dies from different denominations or designs were accidentally paired together, creating coins that should not exist according to official records. And while confirmed modern meals are extraordinarily rare, even the possibility of one involving a 2013 Philadelphia cent ignites intense speculation, because modern mint systems are assumed to prevent such mistakes entirely, and proving one would force experts to reconsider how even the most advanced processes can fail, and it is this tension between assumed perfection and proven imperfection that makes the 2013 no-mint mark penny so fascinating, because it represents the idea that even in a digital, automated world, human oversight, material contamination, and mechanical stress can still produce miracles of error, and The most astonishing part of this story is that many of these coins were spent without a second thought, dropped into tip jars, vending machines, and cash registers, passed from hand to hand as meaningless copper-plated discs, and even today they can still surface in circulation, because modern does not mean immune, and as long as one authenticated example continues to defy expectations and command extraordinary prices, the legend of the 2013 no-mint Mark 1-cent coin will continue to grow, transforming a recent penny into a symbol of hidden wealth, modern chaos, and the timeless truth that sometimes the smallest mistakes create the most valuable treasures, reminding us that in the world of coins, age alone does not determine value, rarity, mystery, and imperfection do, and even a penny from 2013 can carry a fortune beyond imagination.